McKinsey gave me like an intellectual six-pack. There was no problem intellectually that was too big to solve after McKinsey, because they taught me how to take a problem and how to structure it into sub-components, pieces.
There's some days that we might not bring money home. Everything goes back into the business. And I've been trying to figure out a way to reframe that, right? From scarcity mode to abundance mode.
Your team elevates you. They're as good as you, but just in a narrower slice of the puzzle. So at the age of 14, I was driving trucks around New York City, totally illegally.
I was gonna say totally legal, right?
Just do projects, like try it out. As the main leader of an entrepreneurial venture, you need to own the vision. Like the vision is yours. And that opened the light bulb in myself to be like, it's in here.
Yeah.
My growth out there is in here. Oh, invested in like 50 companies. Just, on
just
the
50.
Hey, I'm Luis.
And I'm Luis.
And you're listening to the Content is Profit podcast.
Let's go.
Oh, we had the whole.
We got the kid.
We had the audience.
The audience sitting right there. Yeah.
Follow our next preschool tour.
Yes, absolutely. Guys, if you are enjoying these new shows here in the studio, let us know on social media. Shout out to everybody that has been sending us DMs, loving the studio, loving the new content. By the way, we already have a month worth of, episodes. So, love you.
That was a super random change, but
I've been in production mode all morning, so rearranging with Mava, our new producer. Shout out to Mava on these episodes going out. We were just chatting about that, So, anyways, that's on my mind. I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, that is right. And if our guest here today helps you move one step closer towards your goal, please don't forget to share this episode, and of course, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. And we're not gonna dive into the whole intro because we already had today's baller on last episode. So if you heard the whole thing, which you better did, if not, make sure you listen to it so you can understand his story, his challenges. And we actually talk about kind of like those internal struggles, right? Motivation, finding the right environment, finding the right mentors, the people that believe in you. How can you move beyond adversity? And, we actually wanted to talk pretty deep on his entrepreneurial journey. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, right? Not only his entrepreneurial journey, but he actually has a lot of experience with one of the biggest consulting companies in the world. And then as an entrepreneur, super successful, sold his business. And now he has a fund where he's investing on very interesting companies. So without further ado, welcome back our good friend, Charbel Zreik. What's up?
It's good to be with you guys.
Welcome back.
Great. We had a great conversation last time, so I'm excited to be back.
Yeah.
Man, whenever I walk in here, you guys are just fun. I'm gonna try to keep doing more podcasts with you just so I can have fun.
Hey, you can just hang out. Yeah, that is true. That is right.
Just have fun halfway through the day.
We're gonna pretend it's like a different day. He brought a second pair of clothes. He changed it. Like, all right, let's do part 2.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. So I put on
I'm kidding.
Outfit.
We actually, he was kind enough to come here actually 2 weeks after the first episode that we recorded to record again. And I'm extremely excited. I really don't want to spend too much time on what we talked on the previous episode.
Yeah.
I think we really did a pretty good job at covering, what was growing on a war-torn country and then coming in here, right? A country with lots of opportunities and, moving through those challenges and finding the people that believed in you, right? To kind of like bring the best out of you and move you towards what you have built today. So let's just start with a little bit of the business background, right? Like just quick 30 seconds. What have you done? Like, what has been your journey? Like imagine you have a timeline in front of you. You're like, right, first I did this, then I did that, and then this next other thing. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So, when I was younger, I did a bunch of odd jobs, like from weeding out in nature to being a busboy to whatever. My biggest two kind of pre-professional roles were as a caddy. I carried golf bags around the golf course for like a good 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
And that was fun. Put myself through college with that. I also ran my brother's moving company. He started a moving and storage company. So at the age of 14, I was driving trucks around New York City, totally illegally. By the way.
I was going to say totally legal, right?
Totally illegal. But after graduating, I started my career. The first decade of my career was with big companies. I was at J.P. Morgan's venture capital and incubation division for about 5 years,
Oh, wow.
investing in and launching new companies at the intersection of fintech and
That is cool.
fintech, basically,
Yeah.
finance and technology. And then from there, I went off. J.P. Morgan got acquired by Chase. I became part of the founding team of a hedge fund, actually, that today still exists, called the Roten Group.
Oh, wow.
I spent about 1.5 years at that hedge fund, went off to business school. I joined a venture capital fund. I started a venture capital fund, actually, with the lead founder, the owner, called Osage Venture Capital. From there, I went off to McKinsey & Company and spent about 4.5 years with them. A couple of years in New York, a couple of years in Dubai, doing projects for a lot of major organizations. We'll come back to that. So that was kind of the first, my initial odds, whatever you call it, odds and ends kind of jobs, blue collar jobs, from moving to caddying to busboy. Then professional life, first decade was in big companies, J.P. Morgan, McKinsey. Always chasing leadership. I wanted to lead people. And then after McKinsey, I raised some capital, went out on my own, acquired a business, an IT services company. I grew that business over a number of years, and we sold it to a large private equity fund.
Nice.
Took a couple of years off because that's what you do.
Of course. To get the sabbatical, you got to go explore the world.
Yeah, exactly. Did a lot of inner healing, actually, in the course of that. And then did a couple of different things. I became a yoga teacher, meditation teacher, and ultimately launched, invested in like 50 companies. Just, on
just
the side.
50
in the lower middle market, which we'll come back and talk about.
That's awesome.
And then in this last phase, I'm focused on building a venture capital fund called Manifestations Capital, where we invest in companies that help people in their inner healing journey along the mind, body, spirit. We could talk more about what that means.
Yeah.
Wow. By the way, wow. First, wow, awesome.
Congrats.
Thank you for coming for a second time here.
Yeah. The last thing I didn't mention is I also teach a class at Wharton now, the Wharton Business School. On,
Oh, cool.
valuing, acquiring, and leading small businesses.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's
We should sign up on that class, Studio Podcast Suites.
Let's go.
How do you have time in your day? Just saying. So I'm curious, right? You obviously, I remember like in my mind before going to college, right? It's like initially I want to build something like personally, and I don't know how it was Fonzie on that side, but getting a job was never like my top priority, right? And I ended up getting a job like right after college. I learned a ton. I loved it for a few years, and then I was like, time to move on. You said that you were chasing leadership. Do you see like that leadership coming from a job or coming from what you do now? Do you have like an early vision of like what you wanted like as a North Star? Obviously right now you've invested in multiple companies, you've led multiple teams. Like, was the job the vehicle? Because I think a lot of the people that tune into the show, they're building something on the side, or they're already like transitioned to building something super cool for themselves. Maybe that's a question for me. It was such a hard decision, right? To like going full in on this or doing a job for a couple of years, right? How was your thought process along the way? Like, is that important for entrepreneurs to consider from an early stage? How do you started on that process?
Yeah, wow, what is such an important question. There's been a couple of different phases for that. The initial phase of my life, probably the first decade, was really inspired by wanting to lead people. And I saw my brother do it the wrong way. He was, running this moving company, yelling at everybody, working like crazy, trying to support a family. But the way he treated people, I was like, man, that can't be good. I'd work with him in the business. He's cursing me out. And it was like funny around the family. We all tell jokes about like who had it the worst. We're like, how bad have you gotten it with our brother?
Yeah.
It was really funny. But I was like, there's got to be a better way to inspire people than to like yell at them. And then I went to J.P. Morgan, and there's a lot of great people who are good in finance promoted to be a manager because they're good at trading or good at investing, but then they're not good at leading people.
Yeah.
So it was like always on my mind, what does it take? And then I'd be inspired by movies like Gladiator and see the leader out front. And so I wanted to think about, how do I lead people? That was my driving force. And I do think that's helpful for people to follow, if you feel a passion like that, go to it. See where you could find it. Like, go after it. If you feel a calling. For me, that was a clear inner calling. How do I lead people?
Yeah.
And JP Morgan, in that sense, was your vehicle to go do that? Like, was that, like, did you run into the opportunity? Did you chase that opportunity, right? Like, and here's an example, right? Fonzie has been full-time with Bistro since graduation, right? Which we're very blessed to do that, right? And
Are we?
I mean, are we? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll figure it. We'll see.
But, you know, I mean, we did run the soccer, the Happy Feet franchise for a little bit. But, I mean, that also was kind of part-time. But when I went, for example, full-time running the fitness studios, right, and we have multiple locations and, you know, we have several teams, I remember being like, wow, in my mind, like, I didn't know that this was going to help me so much, right? So either we dive in full and we learn along the way and, you know, leading the people on if we don't, or the tactics or the things or that we need to do. But then I felt like that sped up my process so much. And I ran into that opportunity, right? Like, I was looking for a place to work out. I walked in and then they ended up hiring me as a part-time sales guy. I ended up moving to manager position and running multiple locations. But it was not on purpose. Like, I did not chase that opportunity. Did you encounter JP Morgan? Like, how was that process for you? Or do you like, that's a company I want to develop my leadership skills on and I'm going after that?
Yeah. In this more recent phase of my life, it's totally intentional.
Okay.
Like, I pick a thing and I'm like, like, I go internal first. I set my mission in life as a human. Like, what I start from my death and work backwards. You know, what do I want to do in this world? How do I want to impact the world before in my short time here? And I work backwards, and everything is intentional.
Yeah.
Coming out of Cornell as a 21-year-old, not at all. It was like, you know, let me drop resumes off in the boxes. Let me see what opportunities come. Honestly, it was completely like haphazard. You know, I dropped I remember a resume for Procter & Gamble running a diaper manufacturing line in Mehoopany, Pennsylvania, in the middle of nowhere, and for JP Morgan on the middle of Wall Street, you know, like those were my two offers. And I was like, I could have easily gone to either one of those. And they're worlds apart, you know? So I would say in the beginning, not at all, man. It was random. But then I would notice something about myself. Oh, you seem to be curious about leading people. In retrospect.
Yeah.
But then once I noticed that, I'd say, okay, so see where you could do that. And then looking forward. So, for example, I left the venture capital fund and went to McKinsey proactively because I wanted to lead people. Because I'm like, hey, in investing, I don't seem to be leading people here. And honestly, when I make my decisions about the companies, I would ask other investors who had ran businesses and led people. And so, so I would say I jumped in, just took whatever opportunity was available to me, then observed myself, and then made future decisions based off of that.
Yeah.
You know?
Any big influences in, I'll say, those corporate spaces at first, right, when you were pretty young, that maybe made a mark on you? Or you said you had a, previous episode, a mentor that saw something in you. I don't know if it fits somewhere in this timeline, right? But any lesson that stands out when you were, a 21-year-old, 22, 23, and, maybe you were just chasing life as fast as possible, trying to make the most out of it, right? Maybe I'm guessing at that time in your life, making money was a big priority as well. You're like, I want to be financially set. I want to make a lot of money. And even though you had these thoughts on leadership, right? I'm guessing, like, again, your whole worldview was totally different than what it is right now. So I'm curious if you had anybody that kind of became that role model that you're like, wow. Like, I'm learning from this person, and maybe some of those lessons that you're learning there about leadership.
Yeah, there's a few, actually. So when I left JP Morgan, I left with the guy who was the number 2 guy at JP Morgan at the time.
Oh, wow.
His name was Nick Roten. And we came from very different backgrounds.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, I came, from Lebanon, from the war, like food stamps, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, Nick's father was the ambassador to France.
Oh, wow.
Chairman of Lazard, like the big asset management company. Like, they were part of the socialite, elites of New York City.
This makes for a great movie where you guys, you guys, something happens, lightning hits the office, and then you wake up as a kid in all their lives. You know?
Exactly. But what was amazing about Nick, and he became a role model, is because even though he had this amazing background and a lot given to him, he went after it, and he made his own way through life. I think he was the youngest person ever to become managing director at JP Morgan at the age of like 28 or 29. And this guy in his early 30s was managing like 10,000 people or something. Like, it was just a lot of people under him at JP Morgan.
Yeah.
He left after Chase acquired the bank, and I was fortunate enough to end up as part of his small crew starting this hedge fund, And I always looked up to Nick, man. And what stood out for me about Nick is how he handled adversity. Like there was clearly a distance between the stimulus and the response. He never lost his temper no matter how bad things got. He always put people first. He always valued the people and the connection, and always made you feel warm and welcome.
Wow.
He was just a very humble person that valued people first, that always kept his cool.
Yeah.
And when I looked at that, I was like, okay, that I saw that in stark contrast to my brother. Here's my brother running a $2 million moving company, totally stressed out, and I'm like, one human, right? Two men, one person running billions, calm, cool, and collected. One person running a couple of millions, stressed out at capacity.
Wow.
And that opened the light bulb in myself to be like, it's in here.
Yeah.
My growth out there is in here. I want to be like this guy, Nick Roten.
Yeah. What? All right. First of all, are you still good friends with Nick?
I wouldn't say good friends, no. He still takes a cup of coffee with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, we got to bring this guy to the podcast, too.
Yeah, that's going to be a little difficult.
Yeah.
But his hedge fund now, I don't know how many. It's definitely double-digit billions that they're managing it. And it's one of the leading emerging markets asset management companies in the world. But
that's so exciting.
He'll take a cup of coffee with me.
That is
once
awesome.
a year.
We'll just sneak a microphone while you guys, do the topic. And we feed you questions through a headset.
That's awesome.
Undercover podcasting.
I'm curious about
Wait. Are you changing the topic?
No, it's about the same. It's kind of like, I'm just curious about that difference, right? That you saw between your brother and Nick, right? Like, what do you think it was, right? Like, what was, in a sense, maybe your brother lacking, right, to become a better leader, right? Was he open to be a better leader? Or maybe in his mind he thought he was a great leader, right? I'm curious on that.
Yeah. I think one of the big differences is just viewing yourself as the doer versus the inspirer, or the person holding the vision and sharing the vision and coaching other people. That was a big thing. Like for my brother, of course we had to work for. We had 20 people, 25 people working for this moving company. But at the end of the day, he was a doer. And he prided on, he viewed himself as like the workhorse, the hustler, the doer. And then he hired someone else, and they're also a doer, and they're doing along the side of him. That's not Nick's game at all.
Oh, wow.
Nick had the vision, and he's like, hey, what part do you want to play in this vision? Like, okay, come. Would you like to build your life, and do you want to have a sub-vision of my vision? Come alongside of me here. Yeah, own it, run it for me. Let me know how I could help you.
Interesting.
Totally different. Whereas my brother was like, specifically, he would say, if you're like, well, I was thinking, I don't pay you to think. That was a line from my brother.
Oh, really? Wow.
So, a couple comments, right? Like, we don't know what we don't know, right? So you were exposed to Nick early, and you saw what was possible in a sense, right? I remember, obviously, we're in media. We're like building a media company. And I remember listening to a podcast about this guy that #savaged it, right? Like the guy started 40 shows, true crime shows, 40.
Wow.
In 2 years. And then they sold to Amazon for $300 million.
Wow.
And it was him.
I know, we got to pivot. Okay.
True crime coming to you. And obviously, they followed a formula. They had a framework, right? And we talk a lot about frameworks and how you can replicate. And in the production side for the service that we offer is that. But then they handle it internally, and then they build this asset, that was valuable for another company. It was pretty interesting. So I was like, whoa. You can sell media companies like that to other companies that are interested in that.
Yeah.
We have powerful frameworks because we've done it for 3 years. So, like, to me, that opened the window of possibility and be like, wow. And I remember talking to you, right? I was like, dude, how many shows can we savage? Like, how many can we actually go do? And we haven't really sat down and be like, hey, what are the economics of this? Like, how can we measure this? How can we finance these things, right?
Yeah.
Because in our mind we come from being executioners, right? Like, we like to think that we are creatives, that we add to the thing. how much of the thing do you need to do to also be the guy with the vision, right? So Nick, for example, or you at this point, right? Do you have to know, and like, how much do you have to know about the thing to then bring people on, or you take the backseat as in, I'm learning also from you to execute on this vision, and how can we do it together, right? Like, so I'll do like a micro example of us, for example, like a podcast episode, right? Where now we have Mav as a producer of the show, and part of her job is to create, you know, the assets that come out of these conversations.
Yeah.
So we are currently teaching her the framework that we've executed, and now it's her job to kind of elevate that, right?
Yes.
And then we kind of let go. But in the past, we'd be like, we continue to execute, right?
Yes.
So it's like, where do you let go? How do you balance that when you actually see and you actually want to take part of, like, I want to be the inspirer. You know, I want to transition from the doer to the inspirer.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think as a leader, as the main leader of an entrepreneurial venture, you need to own the vision. Like, the vision is yours.
Yeah.
You know, and for the most part, the strategy is yours. So you need to know enough about the situation, about the industry, about the competitive dynamic, whatever it is that you're creating in the world, to get that part right. Because that's you. You know, you own that.
Yeah.
Once you own that, then I think absolutely, I love what you said, elevate. Like, your team elevates you. You know, by the time I'm hiring a head of sales, they definitely can teach me about sales. I can't teach them anything about sales. I shouldn't be hiring them if I can teach them something about sales. You know, a head of operations, same thing. A head of marketing, same thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you need to learn from your team and have them be better than you. They're almost, I view them as they're as good as you, but just in a narrower slice of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But
that is so interesting, and I really love that. I have a very hard time. I feel like I'm a big dreamer. I do love, like, you know, the vision and seeing all these things, but I do have a hard time too delegating, right? But I wouldn't even consider myself like the doer. You know, like, it's kind of odd. I actually had a conversation with somebody on the podcast recently, Sherry, right? And she was saying that, like, my superpower is curiosity, and that I find something and I get very invested, and I, you know, spend like some time, like, kind of like mastering it to a certain level, and then I'm like, okay, next thing.
Yeah.
You know, and like, I was like, yeah, that's totally me. You know, I remember, I tell the story all the time. I remember when I first found video editing, right? And I was like learning about it, and I was like, man, this is so cool. Yeah. And, you know, my girlfriend at the time, now my ex-girlfriend, she was around, and I was like, babe, I think I found what I'm meant to do for the rest of my life. Yeah. Fast forward a month, I was like, I'm done with this. Who can do this thing, right? Like, I want to learn about this other thing.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot to me, right? So I know, and I know there's profiles for everything, you know. But sometimes I do wonder. I'm like, what is my role? You know, I'm like in here. Right.
Yeah,
so
well, what I love about that is your introspection, and you're getting to know yourself continuously, because we do change over time.
Yeah.
And that sets you up for success, right? Because you'll keep knowing, what am I good at? What do I need support at? What am I not good at? How do I supplement myself with the people around me? So that's key, man. The other thing is the curiosity. That is really, I think, serving you well as a leader, because you get to know it, you know, and then you're done. But that positions you really well to know, you know, the type of person that you need to take that forward.
Yeah.
You know, that's the other thing as you're building a team, is you have to set people up for success. And the way you set people up to succeed with you on your team is by understanding what the context of their challenges. What does this company need at this time from this type of a role? And if you start doing that and play that for a month, that's great, man, because it sets you up for that. And then it positions you really well to define the role and then fill it.
Yeah, I feel like that's where I've been lately. I'm like, all right, I like learning. Also, I feel, I don't know why I have this mindset. I feel this is kind of like a lacking mentality in a sense. But sometimes it's like, so they don't take advantage of me when they come and it's like, oh, I had this problem, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, no, I know that can be solved this way because I've done it before, for example, you know, and I know that's kind of back to look at it in that way. Yeah. I like to think that I like to inspire and empower people as well, but I don't know, I take pride, and we've had conversations about this, about the end product. Like, I want the end product to be quality, to be good, you know? And then when something obviously comes along that might not be up to those standards, I get a little like flustered. I was like, oh, why is going on?
Yes.
And I feel like my immediate reaction is like, give it to me. You're like, I'll fix it. Which is probably not the best way.
And that's so normal and so common, honestly. And that's a hallmark of having like really high standards and wanting excellence, which is a beautiful characteristic. And that's a driving force in some of the best things that have been created in this human experience is the passion around the excellence and holding on to a vision, right? Like Steve Jobs, that's right. Like he wasn't known to be a nice guy for a reason, just like extremely harsh around, no, we need to, this is a vision. Let's get to it. Let's do it. So that's very hard because that's a real strength. Yeah. But we have to balance that with the ability to let go of that, help people form their own vision that's in union with our vision. Yeah. So it's less specific, but it still fits in and is in service of the bigger vision.
It's interesting, right? And a lot of the people, I'm thinking about the people that we've interacted online, that they've jumped on a couple masterminds with us that we've done with other companies, and like the problems that they get. And a lot of the people that tune into the show are doing the production themselves, or like within the context of content, right? And or are setting up their studios or whatnot. And sometimes we have to talk about the value of, hey, just come to a studio like ours, for example, or hire an editor that to do these things. But because of their attractive characters, the one doing the thing, right? There's also a lot of like personal that comes with that, like this baggage of like, hey, am I saying the right thing? Like if I say this, like what's the judgment on the other side? And there's a lot of things that we have to like let go to actually put our message out there. But one of those things is like your team, hiring your team, whether you're hiring for sales, whether you're hiring for your production, right? And that comes with an investment, right? And how do people start transitioning into that? I remember when we first hired the agency that we started to work with, and then later they became like our internal team. It was such a hard decision, man. It was so hard. And
what made that hard?
I think like we were holding on to it, like, and also the
we didn't know any better either, you know? Like I feel like the more you start delegating these things, like it becomes easier because you know the other side of the coin. You're like, I can see the upside. Like I've experienced the upside.
But also,
at that time we hadn't, you know.
But also for us, like for the longest time, I mean, keep in mind, like this is like almost 4 years after we started Bistros, like it was a thing, right? And it was like, the money wise too, like that was a worry. It's like, man, like we're making this investment, like how's that gonna go? Like
the risk that comes with it too.
Where we're like taking money out of like our pockets, and to this day, at a scale, that feeling is still there, right? So, and we did not search for investments for the company. We've always self-financed like through services and the consulting and the mentorship that we do with the other people, mainly the service, right? So we've never looked for an external source to kind of help us out and like relieve some of that pressure in a sense.
Totally.
So that mindset we're working through it, as we go. The decision to buy this studio.
Oh yeah.
That was massive for us. And we were like, and we were working through all of this. And, after 60 days, we've seen the benefits and it's helped us a ton. But we're still working through those things, right? So you're an investor, right? You probably talk to a lot of people that are in similar situations, and like, how can they tackle a situation like that when we know we need to hire somebody, we know we need to find new resources, right? But at the same time, we're like maybe cash constraint, and we're like, man, like is either that or I put food on my table, and if I have kids, it's worse. If I have like, how do we handle that?
There's a lot to unpack there. I think let's talk about a couple of things. One is starting to grow the team and getting it right. One of my favorite things to do is just do projects. Like try it out. Don't make here I'm hiring you for the next 5 years. Here's the equity. Let's share. Okay, we're ready to go. Try out a project. Hey, how can we work? Be creative. If they have a full-time job, be creative. Can you do this part-time for me for a couple months and scope out a specific project and try out how it's going to work? I love that because one, it lowers the jump that you have to take. Because you get to see them, and then if you see how much they help you, it makes the jump easier for a bigger jump. So one is lower the amount that you're jumping and be creative. And by the way, that increases your chances of success with that hire a lot. Because trust me, you're not going to get them all right. If you get 60% of hiring right, you're a champion. Which means you're firing 4 out of every 10 or 2 out of every 5, which is a lot. That's if you get it right, if you kill it. So I like doing that. In terms of investment, this is really, really hard, but I think you need to view it as an investment in yourself, as an investment in your vision. And I say, be bold and make a step and take the decision to invest a certain amount, and then don't look back. So for example, say, look, if I hire this person, it's going to cost me whatever, $5,000 or $10,000. I'm making an investment here that I know could go south. I know it could turn to zero. People take risk all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm taking this risk in myself that we're going to grow this company. And just decide and do the math, like, shit, if I hire them, damn, it's going to be this many. But, all right, I choose to take this risk. And then don't look back. Because the worst thing people do is they make that decision over and over. Oh, is it worth it? Am I getting the value here? Like that?
Yeah.
You know, hopefully you iron that out in the project that you did. You'd see if you're getting the value or not. And if you're not getting the value, it'll become very clear for you.
Yeah.
3 months, 6 months. You know?
Yeah.
But don't second guess it. And then the person, you know, feels like, you know, by the time they show up, they feel like overburdened because you're like, I'm spending so much money on you. You better deliver. And expectations are so high. So take the decision, you know, take that step. And then the third thing is know how to outsource, know how to hire. So put a scope around that. So define the mission for the role. Hey, I'm hiring you for this. One sentence definition of what is the mission of your existence in our team right now.
Yeah.
And if you're doing your job right, these 5 or 6 objectives happen. Mm-hmm. So I call it a scorecard, like the mission and the objectives of the role, and it's very clear so that there's clarity in your mind as what the role is. And you can't do that until you've done what you've done, Fonzie, which is taking a month to get curious about the role.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's
This one is taking years
I
to get curious about the roles.
when we first because I mean the process that we run right internally is been created by us executing, right? And we're like every single episode is like we make it better, right? In a sense, so we're like, wow, the friction was part of that too. It's like we feel like we know this process better, and people creating content right now, like they if they do it themselves, they're gonna feel the same way, for example, right? And I remember it got to the point where we couldn't move forward without hiring that first person who was a video editor, right, for the show. And we're like, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll put in a project, like you said, and this was like intuitive, right, in a sense. Like after failing so much at like trying to find the right person, we're like, we're so over this. Just put the video of like the final product and be like, hey, here's the raw file. Do it better or as close as that. And then I think we got like 3 responses, and then out of those 3, you know, we found that person, and then it turned into a horror story, which is a story for another show. But but it helped us.
That's part of the 40%.
That's part of the later. But like we saw that, right? So I love, because now as you break down this process, I'm like, wow, it was very similar, and it allowed us to find the team that we have now. And we're like, okay, now in my mind I can separate that and be like, perfect. This is like the new like process that we're gonna start running into this. And Mava, for example, like she is in Contents Profit. That's her project, for example, for 30 days. So hopefully she turns out great and we can move forward. You know, we love you, Mava. But
it's like ultimatum.
she knows. Okay. I love all this, right? And we talk about investment, right? And for us, our first investment was in us, in masterminds, in like learning and growing that. And now I remember I was driving last night and I was thinking, you know, at home, there's some days that we might not bring money home, in a sense, right? Like where everything goes back into the business. And I've been trying to figure out a way to, in my mind, reframe that, right? From scarcity mode to abundance mode. And we've never really been familiar. Like our parents were never investors. They were never business owners. Our dad tried one business and it failed miserably, right? Like our mom is a teacher, right? So we never grew up in that environment. Yeah. So like,
I mean, I didn't hear about like what a venture capital was or hedge funds until my 20s.
Nothing.
You know, if I'm being honest.
Or how to value,
Same here.
Value a business, or like how to value, you know, an investment, or like what's the value of this thing that we're building? What's the equity, right? All those things are still in a sense a little foreign to us. Yeah. But last night I had a massive clarity moment when I was driving home. I'm like, man, okay, so how do I, because my wife is your entrepreneur too, right? And she's been mega supportive with all of this, right?
Nice.
And she's been by my side, but sometimes there's doubt, like in anything, right? And at home, sometimes when we're building something, that's gonna come out. And be like, man, like sometimes like I wish I could bring more home, but like is in the business, is this. And how I saw it is like, okay, well, we have our online side that has to have some value, right? Like there has to be a dollar amount attached to that. I don't know what that is, but there's something there. And then there's like this studio physically, like is worth something, plus the process and the thing that we're doing is also worth something. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, those two things are like these bank accounts that I keep putting money into it and continue to grow exponentially in a sense. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that's perfect. That's how I might explain it to my wife next time the conversation comes up. I'm like, don't think it as like we're not making money. It's like we continue to grow, to put money into and intention into these things, and those things continue to grow. Like you mentioned, like, hey, I sold this company, I invested it, we grew it, I sold it, and then I took a couple of years off, right? Yeah. So in my head, that helped me a ton. But again, I didn't know what I didn't know. So, and this was like after conversations with you, after conversations with Fonzie, after like looking at a ton of videos. I'm like, So, how was like your start on that? Obviously, you worked in a company that deals with that. And what are some structures that maybe our listeners can help understand a little bit better, like the value of what they're building? So then that allowed me massive mental freedom to be like, this is it, right? Like we are creating, this company in 2-3 years can be worth X amount. Right. And so how can people get started on that?
Man, you're going to all the great questions. I love it, Luis. So, I mean, a couple of things come to mind. One is begin with the end in mind. Begin with where you could be in 5 or 6 years. And look, not everybody wants to sell a business, but selling a business is a good way to help you frame the kind of value that you're creating, right? So think about in 5 years, whatever you're doing to serve someone, right? Who are you serving? So how many of those customers do you have in 5 years? How much are they paying for your service? How much are your sales in that company, right? And you could do a very quick Google search to figure out how companies in your area are being valued, right? So then you could take that from a sales number and a profit number into a valuation. So now you're sitting, when I hired every person for my company, I gave them a yellow envelope. They opened the yellow envelope, and inside of it was a number that I would wire them on the day that we sell the company. I'm like, on that day, if we accomplish this plan, if we take your percentage ownership times this valuation of the company, I will wire you this much money. And they knew what they were working for, and so everyone was motivated. So I would start with the end in mind, figure out where you want to be at the 5-year mark, and therefore at the 3-year mark, and therefore at the end of this year, in terms of definitely customers, sales, profit, valuation if you can, right? And that helps you to know that, okay, I'm building towards that. And if you don't want to sell, okay, figure out at least in 5 years, here's how much income I'm generating. So then okay, in 5 years I'll have, a few $100,000, whatever it is that's coming in. So I think that is key.
Yeah.
The second concept is just, the risk reward. People in this open economy that we live in get rewarded for taking risk. Yeah, you get rewarded for doing tasks, but the biggest rewards go for taking a risk where there's probabilities of failure and making a success happen when there's a lot of, when it's only a 20% chance of, for taking that risk, you get rewarded. And you need to keep that in mind. And so it goes back again to making an investment. Say, okay, this investment is a risk. So when I first opened my new venture capital fund, Manifestations Capital, I opened up a bank account and I transferred $50,000 to this bank account. I'm like, I am deciding to invest $50,000 in this new venture. I'm not going to be, overly crazy about when that goes to zero, because I know that was the investment that we made. That was a clear decision. So be clear about the end goal. Realize that taking risk is how you generate a lot of value in life, and then decide how much risk you want. I'm going to take this much dollar amount and separate it out, and feel good about that. Don't worry. In the interim, like as you're spending that, as it's going from 50 to 40, don't let that bother you at all. Be like, good, it's supposed to happen. That's what I'm spending the money now, moving closer to my risk. The last things I'll say is, do hold yourself accountable with milestones, right? So at the get-go, be like, in 6 months, I'm doing well if X. for me in the venture capital fund is how many companies have I invested in that are how are the companies doing well, and how much capital have we raised from investors. If I'm not moving the needle on those three metrics, that means, look, we're not moving in the right direction and we should reconsider. And that's okay. Like knowing when to throw in the towel and pivot to something else is part of the success too.
Yeah, 100%. Man, I'm very happy, obviously, that we brought you in here for a second time. But I'm very sad because we only got like 4 minutes left.
Oh, man.
I know. Time goes by so freaking fast. So you're more than welcome to come a third time if you want to. Dude, we might have, the weekly segment with Charbel. Who knows?
This month.
Today we talked a lot about, obviously, that initial exposure to leadership, right? And what it meant to you, and then kind of like making the decision to chase good leadership, some of the examples that you had. We also share a little bit about what it means to empower others, right? Having that vision and then empower others to help you build upon that vision, right? And of course, we ask a lot of questions. I feel like where we at right now, right? In a way, framing questions because we know they're going to be helpful for you listening right now, but at the same time, we know they're going to be helpful for us. So we are, selfishly asking some questions in here that hopefully, they're going to help us move 1-2 steps forward. But I feel like we still got so much to cover, man. We literally stayed in a way, right? Of course, we got your wisdom from all the years of experience, but I'm so curious on what did you learn after you move on to, the consulting company, McKinsey, right? Like then you were in Dubai for a few years, right? Like what were some of the lessons when you started applying all this into your own business that, that you acquired, if I'm not mistaken, and then you grew and decided to sell. Yeah. And now how you're rolling all those lessons into, all the businesses that you are investing. So I think that's a good point.
It's a big question, but let me try to summarize it quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
We
can go. I was gonna say we can continue. This can be like an appetizer for the next episode, for part 3, if you're open to it.
We'll do it over coffee.
We'll do it at live from a coffee shop.
Then you'll get me for like 15 sessions. I'll never leave it that way.
But yeah, if you want to give like an appetizer on that last thing that we talked about, that we mentioned.
I mean, McKinsey, we could talk so much about McKinsey, man. And a lot of people have gone to McKinsey, have graduated from McKinsey, that have done some great things in the world. I think one big takeaway with McKinsey is McKinsey gave me like an intellectual six-pack. There was no problem intellectually that was too big to solve after McKinsey, because they taught me how to take a problem and how to structure it into subcomponents, pieces.
Interesting.
That if you answered these subcomponents, they would definitely answer the bigger problem.
Interesting.
That was probably the biggest thing that I took from McKinsey. The second thing I took from McKinsey is that, actually, this is controversial. Hopefully, the managing directors of McKinsey aren't like gonna come knocking on my door. But in my humble opinion, even though I was at McKinsey, I was a leadership expert, global, organizational practice. I didn't think that what I learned from McKinsey's leadership style was very applicable to me in running a normal business.
Yeah. And
the way McKinsey led, where, at McKinsey, if you do well, in 7 years, you become a partner. If you become a partner, you're basically making $1 million a year. So people have a weird motivation that in other companies, it doesn't work like that. In other companies, if you do well, you get a 5% raise every year, So the context is very different. And so I had to relearn leadership outside of McKinsey in a different way. And I learned that intellect doesn't lead people. You have to be emotions in the body and the way people feel around you. They have to feel safe around you. You have to talk to them in a way that really values them. That's what leads people. Yeah. And I didn't get that at McKinsey. In fact, I had to undo some of the ways that we led people at McKinsey to succeed in my other leadership.
Interesting. Was there a contrast between, what you saw there and what you experienced with Nick in like JP Morgan, for example? Was that like a clash of, ways of leadership, and you had to like kind of like analyze it and figure it out on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Like around Nick, I felt great all the time.
Yeah.
Around like McKinsey Partners, I was being criticized all the time. Like it was all about like we'd walk out of this and they'd be like, "Hey, that was a great podcast, Charbel, but do you have a minute?" And pull me aside. Like I'm like, "Yeah, sure." They're like, "Hey, listen, when you were sitting in there and your fingers were moving, that was distracting. Next time, see if you can not move the fingers on your right hand. That'd be great." And when you talked and you're like, "Oh, that was a," don't say that was a great. That takes too much time. See, we ran out of time. You could do. It was like 5 things you could do better, and so you develop quickly, but you're never feeling good. You're never feeling inspired.
Yeah.
So, we could talk pros and cons to both of that, but. That was a big difference. In one, you felt great. In the other, you didn't feel so good.
That is so.
Hold on.
Yes, but we gotta bring you back.
Come on, dude.
No, I'm just saying, I'm so excited. Man. This conversation is so cool. Like I feel like this is kind of like one of those Joe Rogan episodes that last 3-4 hours. Yeah. Like easily we could do that.
So like what you just said threw me back to our soccer days, right? And. We were exploring this with my coach the other day on like how I feel under certain circumstances or like, and it came back to me where there's some teams that I played the same year for like a couple of them. I felt like great. I was like, I felt like in flow. I was doing good. I was scoring goals. I was being a good team member, right? And the team was elevated in a sense, right? But the same year, same seasons, I was playing in different teams. And that was not the feeling. And it was like I felt less and I couldn't score goals. I couldn't find my flow inside of that team. And then I looked at the coaches of those teams and they're very different styles, right? And we're exploring on like how to lead the team right now and like who do I have to become to be that leader as well? But we have to like go explore the past. And it goes way back, including our dad. Our dad was like, love him to death, right? Like freaking best guys, our rock. But at the same time, after every single game, if win or lose, we will come back to the kitchen to a little whiteboard that we had, and he will like nitpick every single play that we had. And I remember our mom coming in, and it's like, dude, like, didn't you guys just talked about this on like the whole hour coming back from the field, and you still have to do this? I remember that.
Yeah, wow.
And it created like a reaction to like a negative.
It was so bad.
reaction
I even told him once. I was like, I don't want you to go to my games again.
Wow.
Because of like how like bad it was.
And again, like big part of like why we are here in a country with opportunities is him. Like it's like his drive to help us out. But I remember like one team like the same year, one team took us to Italy, and that personally to me got the opportunity. I got the opportunity to go and play in Italy for a year when I was 15.
Yeah.
That same season, I was playing with a different team, and I was in the bench.
Yeah.
And it's like same team, same sport, same season, different construct. One best opportunity of my life to go out and achieve my dream. The other one in the bench, not playing, denying my dream. And it was like the same season.
Amazing.
And it's so crazy because what you talked about is so key. So I would encourage everybody to go and look back at these experiences and identify these moments where when was it where you felt the great, that you could achieve everything?
Yes.
And then explore your environment and what was happening around you and identify those elements, right? You just described it with both of your scenarios too.
Yes.
Different time frames, right? Probably. But you were like, I execute better under these circumstances, and then try to mimic that environment so you can continue to move forward.
Oh, that's so good. That's so
That
good.
was so good. That was all you, man.
I can't believe we're going to end on that. that was so freaking rich. We could take hours talking about that, but that's beautiful insight. Thank you for sharing that about your experience with your dad. Beautiful insight. And I love sports and business analogies, man, because I think it's much more applicable. It's much more so than a family.
Yeah.
And sports are so freaking important. One of the guys that made the most impact on my leadership is a guy who led the women's college team that was the most successful NCAA history track record ever. And I think there's a lot, because sports is competitive and yet relies on people, and it's just amazing to compare sports and business. I love it.
It's the best. Oh, it's so good. Okay.
Charbel, thank you, man.
Yes.
This has been awesome. We gotta cut it here. But yeah, this was another episode full of what we call hashtag Golden Boulders. Just like Golden Nuggets, is way bigger.
That's it. I know.
And dude, I'm excited to. I'm gonna throw it out there. Have you here for a third time?
Yeah, we can talk about that. Let's
go.
It's gonna charge you fancy, you know.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
It's like, can I invest in the show? But anyways, really good. Thank you. Is there anything else that you want to share before we head out?
Man, this is great. This is a lot of fun. I think the pursuit of entrepreneurship, the pursuit of leadership are all beautiful things. For everyone out there who's trying to take a risk, build something for themselves, is just, it's, I commend you. Keep going. The benefits are more just than to your clients. The benefits are also for your own growth, as we're talking about, and they really transform who you are, and that makes them worthwhile.
So awesome.
So keep going.
Yes.
Let's go. Where can people find you? Where can they connect with you?
Manifestationscapital.com. You could subscribe to the newsletter and stay up to date on things.
Let's go. I'm just going to say I subscribe. I'm still waiting on the first email so I can read it,
Oh, it didn't come through. Must have gone to spam. We'll have to.
What days do you send it?
I forget. I outsource this part, so I think she sends it.
Oh no, we just get him fired. No, I'm kidding.
This is what happened. He put the wrong email. That's what I'm saying.
Hey, well, does it come as Manifestations Capital or Charbel?
Both Manifestations/Charbel.
Yeah. So anyways, if you are subscribing, let us know if any feedback so we can, share. That's part of the whole process. That's all part of the
content. You know why I didn't get it?
Awesome.
Because I didn't confirm my subscription.
Oh.
I just confirmed it.
User error. User error.
User error. There we go. User error.
I know the guy. Anyways, guys, on that note, with that said, thank you so much for tuning into the Contents Profit Podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platform and on social media at Beast Bros Co.
That is Ryan and Charbel here, help you move one step closer towards being a better leader. Please don't forget to share this episode and leave a 5-star review. See ya.
Bye, guys.